So I think we're more or less ready. Well, just to set us more into the mood as we begin today, I'll just give you another little bit of a tune this morning. I'm sure we're all looking forward to this day when perhaps we'll hear that noise again. In case you thought I was using my phone, I just want you to know that this has been my church during the last 3 months, sat here in my house with me, and it wonderfully does play for us some wedding music. So welcome to what we're calling Come Back After. Come back after the last few months and talk to us about a special event, talk to us about a wedding or a christening. And during this next half an hour or so, I'm going to share some things with you, and then there'll be plenty of time for questions, which please encourage you to type in at any time during the webinar. I'm going to just remind us of the impact and scope of our work around weddings and christenings and what it might have meant. And then I'm going to focus on 2 key words which are used in our research by both families and couples, and they talk about the day being special and significant. So I'm going to help us think about what makes it special and think about what makes it significant, and particularly looking at 3 moments: about banns and attendance, about the wedding day, and about the day of a christening. And some of the things will be general, but some will be specific. And then I'll spend a bit of time thinking about what happens after the day and how we use that moment. And lastly, I'm going to talk to you about confidence in publicising and telling people what we do. So let's begin by thinking about the impact and scope. I think it's not always recognised what the impact might be of not having weddings and baptisms of children or christenings in this time, in this year. In 2018, which is our last set of figures, the Church of England did 35,000 weddings. That meant we had actual face-to-face conversations with 70,000 brides and grooms, and of course maybe with parents and others as well. And attending weddings, even if we take a sort of 75 as an average attendance, we would have met 2.6 million people sitting in church attending the wedding of a friend or family member. People who would have experienced something of the church at work, something of ministry, something of God's presence and blessing. We also in 2018 did 85,000 baptisms of a child under 12. And of course, at the heart of a baptism are often 2 parents, maybe 3 godparents and a child. So we would potentially be having conversations around baptism with nearly 500,000 parents, godparents and children who are old enough to engage with us now. That's a lot of conversations. And when I say a conversation, I don't just mean this will have been a quick, hello, how are you doing, but a real purposeful conversation. And of course, again, if we take the guests at a baptism, it being anything between 50 and 75, we will have seen something between 4.3 and 6.4 million people simply being in church to attend a baptism of a child. That's a huge number of people. It compares with 2.4 million who attend our Christmas services, a very significant group of people. And this year, that number is, of course, not going to happen for us. So one of the things is, how do we think about reaching those people? Some of them will have picked up in Zoom services, but perhaps this year will be that opportunity gone where we haven't been able to reach out for people to see the church at work. So I wonder, when you hear those numbers, what's your first thought? It might be, gosh, I never thought of it like that. I didn't realise how significant it was. Or it might be, oh, well, thank goodness for that. You know, who knows? But really interesting is, who is your first thought when weddings and christenings have been cancelled and postponed? I recently put a blog which is up on our website called Out of Sight, Out of Mind, ? And one of the difficulties for both the church and for couples and families is that when we're not there for them, we are quickly forgotten. But also we all forget ourselves about the families and the couples. Forget to think about them, forget to keep in touch with them, forget that they might actually still have a need to come and meet with us. It's about remembering the significance of these people. So when they do come back after this hiatus, this time when we haven't been able to meet with them, what are some of the key messages that we reach out to people with? And the number one thing has to be that warmth of welcome, that when we meet people, we're clearly saying with delight, we are glad that we're going to do this. Not this is a problem and we're really worried about it, but we're delighted that you're going to be here. It's been absolutely marvellous this weekend, a great joy to me. The number of stories that have been in our media, on our television, in our newspapers, etc., about couples getting married in churches. I have been so grateful to wonderful, creative, flexible, willing, glad, delighted clergy who were prepared to do things differently to make it possible for couples to get married this weekend. And for once, we were on the front foot with all those stories. Only today, our register office is beginning to offer services. But underpinning, of course, all that welcome and delight has to be we're giving people a real sense of this is a safe place to come. We are doing all the right things. And we'll need to manage people's expectations and our own expectations of what this day is going to be like for people. And think about in what ways will it be the same and in what ways will it be different? And perhaps recognising that different doesn't always mean inferior. But actually for some people, this will turn out to be a really, really significant day. I've shared this slide a number of times, but it never ceases to be helpful to share this as we think about it. And this is a process that we talk about how we respond when we meet people with warmth or process. And I've added some words in here which might help us. If we start in the box in the bottom left corner as I look at the screen, you'll see the words fear and anxiety. And whether it's a family or whether it's a couple, people who are coming to us at the moment, or indeed sitting in their homes thinking about their special event, have got a huge amount of fear and anxiety about whether their day can happen, how it can happen, how they're going to explain it to people, whether it will be okay for them, whether it's safe, whether it's good. Huge amounts of fear and anxiety. And if people have already got a good relationship with us, they might move very quickly when we proactively make contact with them to the box just above. And our job in reassuring them is to talk to them so that they then move from fear and anxiety to anticipation and excitement. But for some people where we haven't perhaps been in touch much before, then what we need to do is make sure we give them really, really good practical information about what's going on. This is particularly true as we'll hear about some of the procedures and processes, preliminaries before a wedding, so that we move them from fear and anxiety to being reassured and confident. And once they're reassured and confident, we start to bring in the warmth of that relationship and we move people towards having trust in us and being delighted at being involved and at what's going to happen and what does happen on the day. So it's a really good thing to take some time to think about when we meet couples and families, allaying their fears and anxiety, moving them forward so that they become trusting in us and delighted in all that's going to happen. So the words that people use a great deal to describe, and this is true of weddings and christenings, is the word special and significant, sometimes the word traditional as well. And what we discovered in all our research with people is that they use these words in a way that perhaps we might want to use a word like spiritual or meaningful, but they don't really have those words. So they talk about the fact that the day was special and significant. And I'm going to suggest that the thing that makes a church wedding or a christening special is the way we build relationship and make that relationship special. And right now, there's never been a better time to build relationship with people. I'm playing around with a phrase at the moment, thinking about, which is curious conversations. This is a great moment for us to have curious conversations with those we meet. When a couple get in touch, or when we get in touch with a couple or with a family, it's time now to build relationship by listening and exchanging stories. And right now there are many stories of joy, of how they have enjoyed being in these last few months, stories of pain and sadness, and indeed, of course, stories of grief and loss. People want to share their stories at the moment, and we need to be curious enough to ask them, how's it been for you in these last few months? Has your relationship been? Has your family life been? What's it been like? Listening to those stories builds relationship. Of course, sometimes we have a relationship already. One of the best things in the interview that I saw on Saturday morning with a couple getting married in Wootton under Edge in Gloucester, right in the middle of their interview, there was a marvellous line when the bride, Fiona, said to the interviewer, "I was so excited when Morag phoned me." Now, I might have been the only person in the million listeners who clocked that particular remark, because in that moment, the fact that she used the vicar's first name in that way, and secondly that the vicar had been proactive, told me that there was a relationship here. And I've since spoken to that vicar and discovered lots of interesting things, and we're going to put up an interview with that particular couple and online so that you can see the story behind it. And it turns out that there was indeed a relationship, because this bride, this young family, had been in contact with the vicar because they'd been going to things like Messy Church occasionally. They'd known her over the years at a toddler group, a drop-in for mums and babies, different ways in which they felt connected to the vicar. So the vicar was proactive as soon as there was a moment. As she said to me, she was waiting for the news that the wedding could go ahead, and she rang them with excitement, and the relationship was there and they could move forward. And that's a relationship with the couples who you may already have in the pipeline, who have had to postpone their wedding, or indeed have still not yet postponed it but may be anxious. And don't forget those families that may have been thinking about or had already arranged to have a baptism this year, contacting them and building relationship with them at this time. It's important because, as I've said, if we don't get in touch with them, we quite quickly become out of sight and out of mind. And what they need at this point is that good information often to begin to move them from fear and anxiety towards trust in who we are and delight in what's going to happen. And contact them as much or as often as you feel is helpful. We know, again, from our research that particularly for wedding couples where the length of time between booking and the event happening can be very long, is the church is particularly good at what I call radio silence. After the booking has been arranged, we often do not make any contact with couples until we need to tell them what they have to do in terms of the preliminaries, i.e. banns or attending. We make no attempt to invite them to things or to let them know that everything's okay. Whereas their venues and their photographers and others will be in touch, telling them about things that are happening on their way, offering them opportunities to come to them. So why not tell all your wedding couples and your christening families about your Zoom services if you haven't already? Why not invite them to come to, before their postponed wedding, to something in your church? Keep in touch. Let them know what's going on. And we have produced some cards that you can use. We have a special card which says time to make plans for weddings. This one here, it shows a kind of contemporary design, but we have more traditional designs as well. Just drop it to a couple saying, ready, time to make plans. Do you want to talk now about your wedding, about how you're feeling, what you're thinking? And then we're going to have, by hopefully next week, a card similar to send to families. And already we have a postcard which is designed really to attach with a fridge magnet to a fridge, which is simply a prayer for families. You could send this to parents, godparents, grandparents, and they write in the names of the children they want to pray for. Just a simple way of keeping in touch. And then that relationship that we have built in the build-up to the day goes through on the day itself. So now I'm going to talk about what makes the day significant. I'm going to talk about 3 events. I'm going to say a little bit about banns and attendance, about a wedding day, and about a christening as well. I've put banns and attendance together as they are part of the preliminaries. And let's just say now, this is the area where we are having the most questions and concerns coming through to us. And first and foremost, I'll point you to yourchurchwedding.org, which hopefully you're all familiar with. We write onto that site interpreting some of the guidelines so that couples can get good information, but often it's really, really helpful for us as clergy and as lay people involved in this ministry to look onto Your Church Wedding, because that's where we put good information. You need to have contact with your banns couples as well as with the couples whose wedding is taking place in your church. Give them reassurance about what the process is and how it's going to happen. And if they're able to come at this time, you're going to begin or continue banns reading, make sure you invite them to attend the service where the banns are going to be read. More than ever, this could be a really important moment. And when they do attend, just make sure you welcome them with warmth. And please don't worry at this time if all they want to do is be in the space and observe what's going on. We may all be feeling a bit like that as we go into church that looks very different from what it had done before. There's also many couples anxious about having been attending to form a connection before a wedding. And again, it's important to make contact with them and let them know what the process will be. If they'd already begun attending before lockdown began, then they may just be able to fit in some continued attendance between now and their wedding day. If they've not begun attending at all, then it's important to get in touch with them and explain what their options might be. And you will need to know the situation locally, because it may well be that they need to get a special license instead. So make sure you're on top of all of that in your situation, and let them know what it means for them, because it does feel complicated to us. How much more daunting does it feel to those who are outside and on the fringe of church? These are the things that worry people. But if they do come, make sure again that they're welcomed and included. And then briefly, we'll go through and talk through some of the moments on the wedding day. Well, actually, the first one I've put in isn't on the wedding day at all. Think about rehearsal for a wedding. You will need probably still to have a rehearsal, but you only need the bride and groom to be present. It's really not essential to have anyone else there at all. Just to run through the way it's going to be different, perhaps from what they've always had in their mind earlier. Of course, if one or two others wanted to come, keeping social distance, they could be there. But in my experience, occasionally rehearsals turn into something that's about a third of the people who will actually be at the wedding. And we probably don't want to encourage lots of attendance at a rehearsal. But do try and do that to help allay those fears, and to offer to listen to more stories and to pray for couples at the rehearsal with and for them, for their day. And let's take the three moments that we know are the most important and the most significant from all our research. We know from our research that the three most important moments on a wedding day are the entry into the church, walking in with whoever accompanies you, the exchange of vows at the altar, and then walking out together as a married couple. These moments will be both the same and yet very different. In lots of ways, of course, the press and others have focused on the traditional moment when a bride will enter on the arm of her father or other relative or friend indeed. And that's important because these days there's lots and lots of flexibility about how people enter a church. You may be able to enter on the arm of your father if you've been in a bubble together as a household, but if you haven't, then it's important that they are socially distant, and you'll need to think about the choreography and the space in your particular church. You may be able to use the outside space creatively and have them walk to the door alongside one another, and then the bride meets her bridegroom at the door and they walk in together, for example. You have to think about your space and how it works for you in that situation. But it's still possible to have music and still possible to do something imaginative in that space. And then there's that moment that lingers on in people's minds, known as giving away. I think right now one of the great opportunities we have to make the service feel special for those present is to use the words that are in the liturgy, which is these wonderful words where you say to the parents, or indeed anyone who has parented the couple, do you, the parents of John and Jane, trust them to one another as they come to be married? And both sets of parents, or indeed step parents, can stand just where they are and respond to that question. So I'd encourage you to have a look at that and just encourage people to use it if you haven't been used to doing that. And then, of course, there's the moment of the vows. We know from all our research that so often after a wedding, in spite of the thousands that have been spent on the day, when couples look back, the moment that will stand out to them as both special and significant is the moment when they exchanged vows. And the words of the vows will be exactly the same. But they may also have an additional poignancy and significance. So it's worth spending some time with couples, listening to stories and sharing those words. In sickness and health, as perhaps never seemed as important. Till death us do part may also have been important, as perhaps there have been losses in the family as well. Richer and poorer might be very important right now as people face financial uncertainty about their jobs and their future. So suddenly those vows will seem even more profound. Again, listening to the story of this particular wedding on Saturday, the vicar reflected on how intently the bride and groom focused on the vows. It's a really important moment and will seem even more significant perhaps than usual. You won't be able to do what I think of as my best drama queen moment, when I wrap the stole around the couple's hands and raise them. We won't be doing that. So it's really important that we use what gestures we can at that moment to give it significance. The bride and groom will hold hands, but you will not be laying hands on them to bless them or touching them in any way. But you can make gestures with your hands and your arms that will show that this moment has significance, and use your voice creatively as well. There will also be other words and readings. That's all still possible to make the day feel special, and you will be able to reflect with them on the meaning of the vows. You may also be wanting, before we talk about the exit, to think about how guests get involved. And I'll say a little more about creative ways in a moment. But just, you will see on the screen, as well as the very clever photograph, which was taken long before lockdown, but the angle of it makes it look like a socially distanced wedding. You may also be able to see a little copy of an invite that one vicar has done for a wedding coming up, where she's made sure that others can be involved with Zoom. So she's created an invitation that the couple can use to send out, including older grandparents who are in a care home. And actually the other residents in the care home will often get very interested and excited to be part of a wedding day in this fashion. So think about that, as well as those that are physically present in the building. And make sure you know what's going on in terms of live streaming and whether that's going to happen, and have talked it through. And then, having done the wedding, thought about the rings, and as long as the rings you don't touch the rings, you shouldn't have to stop and wash your hands in the middle. So think about how you're going to do that. Think about how you're doing the signing of the register. And then there will come the great moment when they exit as a married couple, another great moment. And of course, an organ is permissible, so they could have a wonderful piece of music or recorded music to go out to, but there will have been no singing in the service, no live singing. Photos are really important, but what we need to do is encourage people to move out of the building as quickly as they can and use our outdoor spaces as well. Make sure you've talked to the photographer about their expectations and what they want to do on that day, if they still have one, because they will have to be included in the number of guests that are possible on the day. But again, photographers are clever and creative and imaginative, and may be able to use that outdoor space in ways that become very memorable. Instead of having hundreds and hundreds of photos, people will almost be back to a kind of 1960s, 70s weddings, where you had one or two really special moments that you could treasure down the years. And for many couples, one of the other things is to be thinking about what next. And I've been interested to hear, both in terms of secular register office weddings and church weddings, the emphasis on coming back on an anniversary for a blessing, or coming back at some point next year, or even the year after, when it seems good and right to do so, to have a much more larger and significant gathering. So make sure you talk about blessings to couples and that as a possibility. So that's lots of things. There'll be loads of questions, I'm sure, about the wedding day, but let's move on and talk briefly about a christening, which in some ways is the event that's got most overlooked in these last few months. We've talked hugely about funerals, which have continued. We've focused on all the stories and details and legalities of how we do weddings. But actually, we will have had many families who will have been looking forward over these summer months to gathering together to celebrate and to start their child on that journey we know they will often talk about as the right path through life. So one of the things we might want to be thinking about is, how do we make contact with them, and how do we help them get ready for this day? When we talk about christenings, families, one of the things we know is that parents have lots of hopes and fears for their child, and perhaps never more have they been in sharper focus. What worries might you have, having had a child shortly before this has happened? The threats and realities of our world have never been in sharper focus. People have real fears for the future, which means they have no problem really in identifying what is evil in the world, what is bad, what they worry about for their child getting into their life. So talk and listen to the stories of fears and hopes. What hopes do they have for their child going forward? And use that as a bridge to talk about our faith, what it means to start a journey of faith that will be accompanied throughout by the living presence of God and God's people, that commitment we make in baptism to them as well. You may want to think about how you do some kind of conversation with the family. We won't be running any sort of baptism prep courses where people are physically gathered, but it may well be very possible to go and meet with the family and talk with them about what this service means to them. And think about the special people, because in a small service, the special people stand out even more. And the most special people, apart perhaps from grandparents and parents, in a christening will be the godparents. We know that from all our research. And this might be a great opportunity to make sure they are included in something. Using Zoom, we know how to do this now, to be in touch with godparents before the day. Making sure on the day they are recognised in that service as having made some effort to be there and to be part of this. Explaining to them what the significance is and recognising it. And then just as with a wedding, there are some very significant moments in the service, all of which are still possible. The special moments in a christening are anything that involves the child's name. Many people will call the moment when we anoint the child with the sign of the cross, they will call it a blessing at that point, even though that's not actually what we're doing in the service. Think through how that moment can still take place, because you will not be able to touch the child's forehead in the same way as you've done in the past. So think creatively about how you can do it, and that the parents could still be involved as well. But also the really important moment of being at the font and pouring water will still be very, very significant and memorable to the family. So make sure it's still done with seriousness and integrity, so that it stands out as a moment. Even though you won't be doing that thing of holding the child yourself, you'll still be able to do that moment of pouring the water on the child's head. And then we'll say a little bit more about creativity and prayers, but praying for a child by name, praying for this family in this particular circumstances, having heard their fears and hopes, really praying for them in a meaningful way can be important. And then working out the logistics of handing and lighting and handing a candle, how we do that in the service. And perhaps we don't give it to them at this point, we may be lighting it and then holding it and then placing it down where they can pick it up later, so we can keep all the rules and guidelines in place. And again, we put lots of information on Church of England christenings to help families. There may be as well an important thing, particularly with families who've had a child during this time that you know of in your community or people tell you about. Picking up stories in the media where childbirth in this last few months has been quite an anxious time for people and a restricted time in who you can share joy with. This might be the moment to go and talk and communicate with families, either on your website or in different ways in your community. The opportunities through a Thanksgiving service. We do have leaflets available about Thanksgiving service that you could send to someone and make sure they know that that too could be really important, to give thanks at this time for the safe arrival of a child, and then moving on to talk about a baptism in the future. That might be a moment you want to think about. I think it's still possible, with all the restrictions, perhaps it's even more possible, to be creative about how we do weddings and christenings. We know from lots of things that the things we do that go beyond people's expectations stand out and stay with them. They become memorable moments for people that they look back on. I'm quite sure that these couples who are married this weekend in unusual ways will be talking about their wedding day and the involvement of the church for years and generations still to come as they look back down the years. I remember a long time ago, I was out, I was far away actually, I was in New Zealand, and we were having a very apparently special picnic on a day in January, which is midsummer in New Zealand. And as we all laid the picnic out, and there was about 15 people there, everything was ready, it was going to be a splendid day, a huge downpour fell upon us all and everything was soaked and everybody had to run for shelter. And one of the people who was hosting the picnic said words that day that I've never forgotten. She was trying to console, I suppose, and give courage and confidence to particularly the teenagers present, who were beginning to look very miserable. And she said, look, we could have had 1,000 picnics in our lifetime where it never rained, but don't think of this as a disaster. Think of it as a memory maker, because this picnic will be the one we talk about. And of course, it's the one I'm talking about because I remember the occasion, I remember those words. And for many people, having a baptism, having a wedding at this time, it will become a memory maker, so different from what they expected, but more special and more significant. So think creatively, using the space differently, how your church works, both indoors and outdoors. Think about how you make it feel still that personal ceremony. Sometimes people think that church events, church services are impersonal, that you, the family or the couple, are the passive recipients of what we do to people. But this is a great moment to talk about what's possible and to think creatively, whether that's a choice of a reading, playing recorded music in a new way, or doing something creative. Now, many of you have heard me talk before about being creative with prayers, and I believe it's still possible, keeping all the guidelines about hygiene and distancing, to do something creative with prayers. This picture here is a little christening box I made for someone. Everyone had a gift tag and wrote their prayer on it, and it was collected up into a box given to the family. If you do that properly, if you hand out or place in the seats already the little card, it will still be possible to do that. People use their own pens and then they place them as they leave into a container which the family pick up and take away. So you can think through how you can still be creative on that event, and anything you do like that will stand out to people. And I think more than ever our body language is going to matter. I talk a lot about smiling. Smiling is free. We can always smile at people. But of course, if some people are wearing a mask, if you think it's appropriate to wear a mask, it gets a lot harder to see a smile unless you've got a visor or a special mask where your mouth is visible. So how do you make sure people see that you're warm and engaging and interested in them? Well, I think you smile with your eyes, not very easy behind glasses, but perhaps, thinking about that. But importantly, you project smile in your voice, you project warmth in your voice. And it's really important that we think about that at this time when we're not standing close to people. How do we use our whole body language? And how exciting that in the church physically, you're seeing people's whole bodies for a change and not just their head and shoulders. You're seeing all of our language communication in new ways. So think through how you're pushing energy into the service, using that warmth in your voice and in the gestures that you make to encourage people and make them feel included and welcome. Being creative will be important in all these occasions. And then it's easy for us all to think that when this day is over, our job is over too. Phew, we've done the wedding, we've done the christening. But as we've always said in all our work around life events, it is so important that we keep in touch with people. And once again, this is a great moment to do that. Let them know what you're doing. Let them know that they can drop into your Zoom messy church that you're having a go at, or indeed now to something physical that you're able to do. And when they do come, make sure they feel welcomed and included. One of the greatest ways of making people feel involved and included is letting them help with things. You may need someone to help you do something right now. You may need volunteers to help with cleaning. You may need volunteers to help with some of your technology. Listen to the stories of people's lives and enable them to be part and to join you on your journey. But also right now, it's something about walking alongside with people in their fears and anxieties in the weeks and months, even into next year. We know again from our research that particularly with families, often they want to know, can they pray? How do they pray? What Bible stories should they be reading? Can we make sure in this time that we're getting in touch, just letting them know different things? There's a brilliant website now, Faith at Home, that the Church of England has been doing. Look at resources on there and encourage families to get involved. And remember that the question that seems to lie at the heart of many people who are on the fringe of church is not tell me what to believe, but tell me then how to live. And never has that been more important than in these difficult and changing times. What does it mean to be a follower of Jesus? What does it mean to be a Christian? What does it mean each and every day as I go about my work, my home, schooling, my life? And helping those we meet to think through those questions can be important going forward as well as we go alongside them. My final thing before I open this up to questions is to talk a little bit about thinking forward to not just those who are already, as it were, in the system, whose bookings you've already taken. But what about other people? People who might even this weekend have seen lovely stories about the church doing weddings and think, could I do that? What are we doing this year and next year? How are we telling these stories? And are we confident enough to encourage others to come and ask? You may, as I've said, heard of people having babies or romances growing in lockdown in your community. Make sure your website has really good information for those who are interested and inquiring that says, come and talk to me. The phrase we use now is just ask. If you're interested, just ask us what we're doing at this time. Think about how you're engaging with social media in your community and around the church. telling those positive stories about what's going on. And it may be that there's local media opportunities as well. That might be as basic as what's in your parish magazine, if you still produce one. What are you putting there? How are you sharing stories and possibilities about life events, and particularly about celebrations of weddings and the arrival of a child into a family? And remember that the church isn't just there for a day. We're actually there for all the days to come. And this situation we're in is ongoing. And those couples and families you meet now may, in 3 months, 6 months, a year's time, be encountering other life events, including loss. And we will still be there for them in that moment. And it's really important that we let people know, because faith is not just for a moment. Our faith journey isn't just about high days and holidays. It's what sustains us each and every day of our lives, in the ordinariness and the monotony sometimes of these times that we're living in right now, and through the difficult and joyful moments as well. So we started last year to put out a publicity campaign, and you can get hold of materials from us. And if you want to know more, do get in touch. But this is a banner that can be put outside your church when it's horizontal, or vertically inside a building. That's probably less useful at this moment. And it says three things. It says, a child arrives, a marriage begins, a life ends. Just ask us how we can help you. Use these words, and we have posters as well for the individual occasions that you can use to publicise and let people know that the church has never closed. It's always been there for them in their communities, generation upon generation, and will continue to be there. So have some confidence and think about when the time might be right for you to start telling people what it is that we offer as a church across and through their lifetime. We have many resources, and most of you will know about the resources that are available. Special invitations that you can send to people for all the different events, cards that you can send. On the website we have creative ideas and liturgies, and you find most of those at the Church Support Hub, and we're always putting new things, new ideas, helpful things on there, and these webinars are on there afterwards as well. And you know that where you buy printed resources is through the Church Print Hub. Many of our special COVID resources are available free. For example, we have a poster with a QR code on it that you can put up in your church building or in your porch, so that anyone who's coming in when your building is able to be open can find a prayer that's specifically related to what they might be feeling right now. A prayer for their family, a prayer about those who are grieving, and a prayer about their own loss, as well as the Lord's Prayer. So do have a look at those resources as well. Other resources are not able to be free, but we know that they're very valuable and useful, so do use the website. So just to reflect before our questions, think about this as we meet people again. Who has been affected and who has been impacted? Not just the church, but all those we would have met. How can we make sure we include them in our heart and mind of prayers? How do we make sure it's special? By building relationship. What can we do? Keeping that significance by focusing on those key moments in the liturgy and in the service. Connecting with people by keeping in touch, making sure we know what's available, and having confidence to start to tell others what we do. And don't forget as well, you can always look at the Life Events Diary, which you may not have accessed before, which is a great free online administrative tool to help you do many of these things in terms of contact and keeping in touch. I'm going to end by praying for those we meet and for us as we continue to work in these challenging but sometimes very exciting times that we're in, where we've got new opportunities as well as new challenges opening up. So let me pray for us all at this moment. Loving God, we give you thanks for this great privilege we have of being alongside people, sharing your love at major moments in their life. We pray for those in our communities at this moment who are anxious and afraid about the future. For those couples for whom wedding vows of sickness and health, richer and poorer, death parting, are feeling very real at this moment. For families who are anxious about what the future might hold for their child, who long to be gathering with friends and family to celebrate and to commit their child to be blessed and to journey with God into the future. Equip us with an open heart to reach out to them, to communicate well and clearly your love for these families, to move them from fear to trust, not just trust in us, but above all, the love and trust that they will find in you. Give us courage where we need courage to meet the challenges ahead. Give us excitement where we can see the opportunities. And above all, keep us faithfully following you on this and every day. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you all for being here, but do keep in touch. We love being with you. Thank you and goodbye.